Welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. This week we're doing the same webinar we did last week, but with a couple new demos. I felt like my demo last week was not good, not complete. It was incorrect in a couple ways. And we're going to add a couple more pieces of information and basically do it again. And I've got happy to announce that I have Hilary with us today. She's our top developer here at Qdabra, and I'll be switching to her for the demo here in a couple slides. So you can see my slides. I'm going to just quickly walk through what it is we're talking about this week, same as last week with a couple differences, and we'll review what we did last week. We're going to re-demo the UDCX stuff. We have it working now, and I'm very happy to say Hilary has it working. And we're going to actually do a part 3 next week with content types. So if you were waiting to see content types, just wait one more week, please, because we are going to cover that topic as well and talk about duplicate columns. But first, let's make good on the webinar demo that we did last week and make sure that you understand how to do this, because it is important. It's important because the best practice is to have 2 different sites, at least 2 different libraries for your development and production when you're building forms on SharePoint. And ideally have 3, development, test, and production. The reason for that is that you don't want to deploy something to production and have something that's broken. You want to deploy it first, test it, and then deploy it to production. So there's also the reason for moving data. So we've got these 3 different scenarios, and 2 of them are kind of the same, but last week we covered scenario 1 and 2. I'm not going to go over those again, but we are going to focus on 3 and 4, which weren't working last week, and talk really more about what changes you need to make to the UDCX files to make those work. And so once again, this is the first scenario, one library migration scenario, and we talked about that last week. I'm not going to go into detail on that because you can go to the webinar YouTube from last week. That webinar demo went okay. And the second scenario then is you're moving from one site to another, and that also worked well last week. That obviously you can use UDCs for that. This week what I want to talk about is come back to this demo where we're moving from one site to another. Actually, first we're moving from one server to another with the same URLs, and then secondly we'll talk about how to move from one server to another with different site collections. So with no further ado, I'd like to quickly go through this demo, and I'm really happy, Hilary, that you joined me today because you're our most popular developer.
Oh, well, thank you. And everybody here probably knows that we're not going to quickly go through anything because it's me. So we're going to go through things slowly. Hopefully you guys can, Patrick, can you see my screen? Let me pop up Internet Explorer here, or Edge. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So and my error, I should have popped this open in IE instead of Edge because we wouldn't expect Microsoft products to all work together. So what we've got here is me signing in. What we've got here is we've got our form set up. You can see in the URL we've got, here's our root site, okay, and then here's a subsite, and we've got a subsite underneath this. Now from what I saw from the forms Patrick was using for the last webinar, one point of confusion was there were a number of subsites underneath this webinar subsite, and what we found through some experimentation was that as long as your subsite URLs here are the same, it doesn't seem to matter if you're down several levels deep. What will get changed when you publish the template from one server to a different server is this portion of the URL, the server portion. So if you were setting up a dev and a test environment, and I'll come back to that in just a second. If you were setting up a dev and a test environment for your form, you would want these subsites and subsites and subsites to have the same URL. Okay, so just use that as your best practice when you set things up, and you will have an easy time moving things. I want to show you real quickly from this library. We'll go into the library settings. We'll hit the advanced settings, and I'm just going to grab this template from here so you can see I'm pulling it directly from this library. While that's opening up, my data connections that I'm using are these two right here. This is my main submit and this is my projects. I'm going to download these so I can show you what would need to change before you upload these to your new site. So the things you're going to need to have in place on your target site where you want to set this up is you need to have a list set up that you're going to use here, and you need to have your library, or at least know what your library is going to be that you're going to publish, that you're going to be submitting your form to. So if you don't already have your library created, as long as you know what your URL is going to be to your library in the end, you can get your UDCXes fixed up. Name your data connection library the same thing. Again, we want the URL to match. So if you are using in your production site data connections with no space, in your test site and your dev site, you want it to be data connections with no space. So these naming conventions, you want to keep your environments as similar as possible. The main thing you would probably see as a difference would be hopefully your server. Hopefully you have one server for test, one server for dev, one server for prod. You can also do this with site collections, and we'll talk about that after this. So here's my form. I'm going to change just about nothing, okay? And I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to save this somewhere. Probably here. It's going to overwrite something because I've already got one published. And then I would walk through the publish wizard to publish this up. Before I publish it, I would probably change my UDCX files and get those uploaded to my data connections library. So here's my project's UDCX file. Here's what I need to change. I need to change my web URL. I'm going from qdabra.sharepoint.com to training2013.formsport.com. So I need to change that. This is a query data connection. I need to change this list ID. So if I go over here to my new list, which is projects 2, the easiest way, you can just go to list settings, you can grab this list, you can grab this URL and you can decode it. But if you just go to information management policy settings, you can see it's right here in the clear. So I would replace that over here. I would replace that guy. And the other thing I would replace is I would fix up my web URL so it was correct. Since I'm going to be using the same subsite structure with the same URLs, the only thing that would change here would be the server portion of this URL. Okay? The other thing, since this form submits, is I would need to clean up my submit data connection. The pieces that would change here could be this piece, this URL, and if I wanted to use a different library name, I could, and I have used a different library name in the one I've got set up over on my target site, my new site that I'm publishing to. So you can change that portion. The piece you do not want to change, right, is this subsite stuff. So keep things at the same level, use the same names, use the same URLs, everything will work. You don't have to use the same library name. You can use a different server. I know I'm like really pounding on that, but it took me a lot of work yesterday and the day before to learn that, so I'm trying to reinforce it for all of us. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish this to my other server. Because I am extremely lazy, I'm going to go and copy that URL right there. Probably would have been faster to type it, but you know, lazy is as lazy does. And we're going to paste that there and hit next. Now at this point you could create a new library if you wanted to. And like I said, as long as you have in your submit data connection the correct library, the one that I've got in my target site has been changed to Task Creator C. So I'm going to just go ahead and update this template. And you guys saw I did nothing else with this form. I just saved it and changed the name. Here's the magic checkbox. This is going to change the Qdabra SharePoint.com portion of everything in this scenario. Okay, so it changes the root or the site collection. And that's what's going to change here. Your UDCXs take care of the rest, the ones that you've already fixed up, saved, and uploaded over here. So the UDCXs that we've got, I keep wanting to take you back to my other scenario. I'm not sure why I'm so determined to do that. So the UDCXs that I've uploaded here, I had already fixed up yesterday so that they had the correct URLs in them. So back we go. Here's my publishing wizard. If I open this guy in the browser, we're just going to fill one out real quick. You can see you can see Patrick's added to the list. We've got meme infestation now. If we go look at our projects to list, you can see these are the options available to us here in this site on this server, Training 2013. I'll do my usual high quality data entry here and hit submit, and you can see that if I click the button right, that this form submitted to this library. So I took my form here and all I did was republish it once I had those data connections set up. Now the thing is you'll generally do this one time, right, as far as setting up your data connections goes, and I mean getting those UDCX files fixed up and uploading them, making sure you have the same SharePoint artifacts in your test site or your dev site as you do in production. Where you will see some additional workload is when you have a new list. Let's say your form is in production and you've added a new data connection to a new list. Well, yeah, you're going to have to get all that set up in dev, and then when you go live, you'd move it to prod. Patrick mentioned optimally having 3 environments, and this is the reason why 3 environments are nice. Let's say you're in dev, you've got a form, it's in production, users have been using it, and Sally over in accounting has come to you and said, we need this new functionality, it requires this new data connection to this new list. Well, you set it all up in dev, and now you're going to move it to test, and that gives you a practice opportunity, right? That makes sure you know what you're doing, because you're going to set it all up in test. You've got all your steps down now. So when your form goes from test to production with this new list and the updated UDCX, you'll have done this once already. You'll be confident. You'll be ready to make these changes to take this live, right? And that's why it's nice to have 3, is because with these, when you're changing data connections and you're setting up new ones, you may be in a scenario where it's nice to have that extra practice. Okay, so hopefully that all made sense.
That's a great point, Hilary. Can I just interrupt 1 second here? I want to. Can you show them in the data connection wizard where they will convert the data connections to what we call universal data connections? Some of you may not have done this before, and it just dawned on me that it might be good to show you where to do this. And this is really the key. We covered this last week, but if you don't have if you have data connections that have not been converted, you're going to want to do what Hilary is showing right here.
Right. So if you have, I'm just going to add a random data connection here, and if you have a data connection that hasn't been converted, you'll want to convert it, and we'll just go ahead and we're going to grab our documents folder. And so we've got this data connection. This is all good. Okay, so now we've got a data connection that is not a UDCX. Here's one that is. You can tell because see how this says data connection file blah 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 UDCX and connection source blah blah blah. Okay, so we know that one's UDCX. We know that one is. This one is not. So we hit convert to connection file. You know, we put in the URL to our data connections library, data space connections. We put in a name for it. I'm going to call this docs UDCX. Okay, leave this selected relative to site collection. That's the piece that lets InfoPath know that, hey, when I publish this to a different site collection or root server, right, because in this scenario that we're looking at, our site collection is, you know, this guy, right, because it's not /sites/ whatever. These are subsites. Okay, so we're just going to say relative, update this when I publish this somewhere else. and we do that to get it updated. The other thing that people don't always know how to do, and that I'm going to cover for you because I like to make sure everybody starts the day completely bored out of their minds, is people don't always understand how to go and reuse a data connection that already exists on your SharePoint server. So we've got our projects UDCX, it's on our SharePoint server. We've got our main submit, it's on our SharePoint server. So what you do here is you use SharePoint server for get external data. If your site has been added to your drop-down, oh, let's just say we haven't actually used it before, then you click Manage Sites and you add your site. You can give it a pretty display name if you like, or you can be like me and just do the bare minimum. And you can see this goes and finds any data connection libraries you have, and it gives you these data connections to choose from, right? And then you can choose your data connection and go on from there. Now, I had an experience earlier where I could see my main submit, and I'm not quite sure why I'm not seeing that here this time. Maybe it's because I am not selecting the right option. But when I had a UDCX that had an incorrect URL, I'm going to go ahead and pop open the email I sent Patrick yesterday. When I set up my UDCX and I had the wrong URL in the UDCX for the library because I had not created the library yet, I just wanted to let you guys know it did get checked for. And so if your submit data connection has an invalid URL, InfoPath won't let you create a data connection to it using the existing connectoid, and I just thought that was interesting. So at any rate, that's how you find them from the SharePoint server. That's how you convert them to UDCX. Finally, let's take a quick look at this other scenario that I set up. So here at the site collection level, you can see I've got December 2015 QROs. I just reused what we had. And for here, I had O365 dev. I took the same approach here with these forms. I set this form up to use the data connections in the data connections library on this site, and you can see the site collection URL is entirely different. And then once this was set up and working correctly, I downloaded the UDCX files, I manually modified them, I set everything up over here on this site collection, which has a different URL, through the site collection level, and everything here worked just as anticipated as well. So the key takeaway for your structure is your subsite structure and URLs have to be the same. Your server URL, including through the site collection, can be different. So what this means to you is if you do not have different servers to use for dev, test, prod, you can use a different site collection for dev, test, and prod. And in fact, we have a large client project that uses 2 different site collections instead of 2 different servers. It's a very valid approach. It works just as well. If you were to start creating subsites that you wanted, you need, for whatever reason, you need to have things 3 subsites deep, then you would need the URLs to match through those subsites. But up until you start hitting subsites, you can have different URLs either because it's a different server or it's a different site collection. So I think that's all I've got, Patrick, unless there was something I missed.
That's great, Hilary. So we have one question from AH. Why do we want to convert our data connections to universal data connections? And I've already replied, and I'll say what I answered, and then have Hilary, you can chime in. I said so that it's easy to publish from one site to another. You don't have to worry about the data connections because they are externalized. They're independent of the form template. Is that what you would say, Hilary? How can we make it simpler to say?
Yeah, I would agree with you. And one thing we can look at that I saw, let me see if I can get the right browser window open, that I saw from what you were working with last week is, for example, in this site here, we've got projects to is the list we're using. I mean, if we wanted to create a new projects list and make sure the form here was using that new projects list without republishing the form, we could go in here and modify our UDCX. From a development standpoint, the more things I can do without having to republish the danged form, the happier I am, because I consider republishing my form to be sorry, it's going to sound silly, risky. I mean, if I can change things without republishing, I'm going to. And this is one of those cases where having things externalized is really nice. What if for some reason we needed to start submitting to a different place? You know, we could just change it right here in our UDCX without changing the form.
Great. Yeah, so hopefully, AH, that answered your question. Thank you for posting it. If anyone else has a question, please post it. And let's see, Brian has a question. I was able to alter the SQL query sort order without having to modify the form. That's a good comment. I don't know if that's a question or not, Brian, but I think that we should tell the rest of that, yeah, I guess SQL sort order. Hilary, I'm not sure I understand exactly what Brian means there. That's the SQL query sort order he's saying was able to modify without modifying the form. Oh, that's
so Brian, I think, yeah, it's in the UDCX,
right.
maybe in your SQL UDCX connection. Yeah, because you can look at these, I mean, this is human readable, it's XML, right? And so I would imagine that there's probably something in a SQL one that includes the command, right? Yeah.
Yeah, great. So that's exactly a great example. Thank you, Brian. Sorry I didn't catch that as quickly as Hilary did. We have another question from Devin. Is there a performance difference between UDCX and internal data connections? I guess there would be, because you're going to have to pull that UDCX in on open. So there might be a slight delay, and depending on your connectivity, but these are small files, so it probably wouldn't be a huge delay. Let's see. I actually want to switch back to my slides very quickly. And Hilary, thank you so much for presenting. That was a wonderful demo. Just to recap then, what Hilary basically showed is that you can use relative UDCXes to publish from one server to another, but the sites, the subsites, and the URLs have to match exactly. So keep that in mind. The key step is to make sure you adjust those data connections when you republish. That's really important. We also showed you how to go from one server, one site collection to another. And to do that, you're basically going to use the same approach. So you're going to manually modify those UDCX files, and like Hilary mentioned briefly, if you haven't created a library in the new site, you may see this error pop up before you publish.
Oh, no, let me clarify. That wasn't on publish. What that was, Patrick, was when I took the entire scenario and said, okay, now I'm going to set it up to try it in a site collection. I went ahead and recreated my data connections in InfoPath. I used the UDCX files that already existed on the SharePoint site. But because I knew the structure was going to be different in the manifest, I thought, oh, it's easier just to blow these away and recreate them. And that's when I found out that if my library didn't exist that was mentioned in my submit data connection, I got this error, and it was just one that I'd never seen before, and I just wanted to highlight it.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. So once again, you're going to be changing these UDCX files once when you go from dev to test to production. You'll change it, and you'll change both the query data connections where you see the URL there and the list ID. You'll also be changing the submit data connections if you have them, but that's just one line there. Hilary mentioned how to do that. So once again, the hint for easy migrations, everything after the site collection needs to have the same URL. For my site, for Hilary's site collection scenario, she's using subsites under the site collection, so she did something basically like you saw there, and everything works because the same URLs after the server are preserved. But in the different site collection too, the structure is the same. You see that there's the same, I guess the same depth, would you say, Hilary, for the top versus the bottom?
Same, you want the same structure in terms of if you're down 3 levels on subsites for some heaven-forsaken reason on your production, if that's how it has to be in prod, that's how you want it in test. So keep that structure, keep the levels the same. If you're down 3 subsites, stay down 3 subsites. Subsites have to stay the same URL. Site collection can be different, or server root can be different.
And then lastly, Hilary showed this as well, but if you need to change those URLs, those IDs, those list IDs in your query data connections, and you're having a hard time figuring out what the ID is, just go to the information management policy. The ID is non-decoded in the address for that one. Finally, we have had some questions already. Let's open it up again. I see a comment from Brian. I did send the PowerPoint slides from last week. I sent it late. I actually sent it last night. So hopefully you received that. It was a 2 megabyte file. So if you didn't receive it, we'll send it again. We'll send today's deck again. We won't send the samples. Well, actually, I guess we can send the samples. They're not going to work unless you republish them. So I'll send the samples along with UDCX files with today's webinar kit. Thank you for your patience for last week's webinar kit. Because of the demo problems I had last week, I wasn't confident in sending that until last night. So let's see, any other questions for Hilary or me? We are going to be covering migration again next week. We'll be talking about site content types as well as duplicate columns, which comes up quite often with content types. And hope you can make it next week. Doesn't look like we have any other questions, so thanks again for being here. We'll get this recording up on YouTube in the next hour or so and get that package out to you. If you fill out a survey, it's a short 4-question survey this week, and hope you have a wonderful day.